Welcome to NEK VT Rocks. My guest today is Shane Rogers, and Shane is representing...
I am the Rooted in Vermont project manager.
And that means what?
So, Rooted in Vermont is a campaign that's going on throughout the state that's really working to change how we think and talk about local food. So the whole entire goal is to really celebrate how everybody in Vermont is doing local in their own unique ways. You know, local food isn't just about like craft beers and $15 hamburgers. People have been doing local in the state for generations.
Yeah, it's called survival.
Right, exactly. And it's like, we're really focusing in on like helping people celebrate when they're foraging or growing their own food in their backyard. Hunting and fishing has been a very important part of Vermont's heritage and is a great way for families to provide local sustenance. And we saw when we created this that the people that are doing that aren't always talked to in this local food movement. So we want to really break down those barriers and have everybody see local food as their own and have everybody feel like they can be a part of the local food movement. Because ultimately, when we're buying local food, we're supporting our local economy, creating jobs, and it's really just a win-win all around.
Do you have a background in food?
I don't. I have a background in journalism. And I just took a pretty deep interest in food after graduating college. And as I like meandered through a couple newspapers and started really focusing on like agriculture and food access stories, I realized that I wanted to be on the advocacy side. So that's when I ended up finding, I used to work for Green Mountain Farm to School.
And that's how a lot of Newport people will know you.
Yes, exactly. And then from Green Mountain Farm to School, transitioned to Rooted in Vermont. And Rooted in Vermont is the campaign of the Vermont Farm to Plate Network. And the Vermont Farm to Plate Network is about 300 businesses, organizations, government agencies that are all working towards Vermont's food system plan. And it's been a lot of fun to be able to kind of meander through Vermont's food system because it's so...
I mean, journalism, activism, and food, it's a great combo.
You can't beat it. And the best, one of my favorite parts about getting into food, especially up here, is all the food that you get to taste. So tons of farmers around here are just doing great things. Lots of people are really doing a lot of great value-added products. And
Can you explain what a value-added product is? I mean, it's such a sort of buzzword, but what does it actually mean?
So basically, value-added products are when people take food, the basics, like whatever you grow or hunt or raise, and they make it into something else. So think like taking your tomatoes and your peppers and your garlic and your onions and creating salsa with it and selling salsa. And those like run the whole gamut. It can be from, you know, local beer to really anything that you can see or think of on the shelves.
Is there much of that happening?
There's tons of it happening. One of the great examples is actually down in Hardwick at the Center for an Agriculture Economy. They are providing startup entrepreneurs a space to be able to do it, because a lot of time a big hindrance is not having like the commercial grade kitchen and the sterilization and all the licenses. So they're able to rent space and say like go in and make hot sauces, and they can rent it out for a couple hours, bottle that, and then they're good to go without having
that's
to
where
make
that incredible kimchi comes from, or it did initially. I don't know where
Which
it
one?
I don't remember what its name is.
There's so many good kimchis running around nowadays.
There was one that started there, and it was fabulous. And they have it at Newport Natural if anybody's interested.
It's the
advertising plug there.
the just an amazing amount of great Vermont food it's mind-blowing sometimes. And then we sit there and we think like Vermont is the epicenter of this local food movement. That's what everybody thinks even outside the state, is they see Vermont as a leading example.
Is it true?
Well, that's the
or just an illusion.
Yeah, so only 7% of the food bought in the state comes from local sources.
Wow.
And Rooted in Vermont was created with the hope to bump that up to 10% by 2020, by the end of 2020. And of course, that's going to be mixed with all the different efforts of all the other organizations and the Agency of Agriculture and all these businesses. But if we are able to bump up from 7% to 10%, that'll be about $300 million in economic activity in the state. So that includes new jobs, that includes infrastructure for like trucking and business along those lines. And then of course that just includes more money in the pockets of our local farmers.
Right. And we do have local trucking businesses who I know are shifting food from produce from one end of the state to the other. It is amazing how all of this comes together. And most of it's out of our consciousness.
Yeah, you don't see it a lot.
Right.
And there's just a ton of hardworking women and men that are really doing a great job at getting this rooted in Vermont food on the shelves and making sure that our farmers are staying connected and being paid. And of course there's always improvements that can be made, but the Farm to Plate Network is working super hard to help coordinate all these efforts with organizations and businesses to make sure that's running as smoothly as possible.
Are you connected with the Tasting Center in Newport at all?
Not specifically. We've worked with the Tasting Center. I think you can actually see one of our Rooted in Vermont stickers.
I think there is one on the window.
And the Tasting Center is it's a shining example of what can be.
Right.
And I know they have been working with the Farm to Plate Network in general and have been involved. I think there's actually, I'm not sure if there's actually going to be a video coming out featuring them and their business. So.
Yeah, their new tap room has some amazing food plates that are all absolutely local food. Yeah,
and it's that type of support from businesses that is really what we're trying to instill. And that's why Rooted in Vermont, though, is there, because sometimes when people throughout the state see that, they don't see that as something that is for them. They don't see that as accessible. And what we're trying to do with Rooted is by breaking down those walls and letting everybody into this local food movement, they see the Tasting Center as something that they should be visiting, and they can pick up their bagels from Jocelyn and Cinta. And then also when they walk into Vista or Shaw's or Price Chopper, they're seeking out the local options where they can. And the thing that has sometimes, I think, been a hindrance to allowing people to participate in the local food movement is that there's this perception that if you don't do all local all the time, then you can't sit with us, you know? And we really want to get rid of that.
Well, until we grow mangoes and bananas up here.
And everybody does local in their own way, and that's okay. And we're not asking anybody to stretch the budget. And the fact is, the majority of people shop at these larger grocery stores, and they don't have a lot of time, or they're working 2 jobs, or they're running around with their kids, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask everybody to go to every farm
only shop
stand.
local.
And we want to be very inclusive of all the ways that everybody's doing it, because
all of the supermarkets around here have a shop local area, which is really nice.
I love the one in Vista right when you walk in the door. I know you can seek it out in Shaw's and Price Chopper as well.
But it's there everywhere, as is the local fresh produce. And of course we have the farmers market too.
The farmers market has been great, and that's what we really want to encourage people to talk to their grocery stores and talk to the managers and ask for more local food. I know Green Mountain Farm to School has done a great job at getting some more local produce in these larger stores through their Vermont Harvest of the Month and different initiatives. But really what it takes is having people ask for more local, because once the customers start asking for it, and those grocery stores see that they can make some money off of it, then they'll be more likely to put it on their shelves. And it's, once again, just a win-win for every single person.
Yeah, and it's really cool that you're including hunting and fishing in that, because that's such a big part of the Vermont economy, and it's an underground economy, a lot of it. But it's important. People who shoot up here don't waste what they shoot.
No, and it's been a part of Vermont's identity for for generations. And we're really working hard to bridge that gap between the perceived local food movement and the hunting and fishing movement, because there's so much similarity. We've been able to develop also a great relationship with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife, because Vermont Fish and Wildlife, they see food as an opportunity to engage another generation in not only preserving our outdoor spaces, excuse me, but also in participating in these Vermont traditions as fishing and hunting. And they're doing events all over the state, such as learn how to fillet a fish and cook it, and they have hunting seminars, and it's been a great relationship that we've been able to establish.
Why would you want to eat fish pulled out of the lake if the lake is in horrible condition?
Right, absolutely. And everything kind of goes hand in hand. And I think that's a lot of the misperception, is that one person, one group sits on one side and one group sits on the other side. And in reality, we all have so much in common, and we all should be working together. And if I could, we want to bring everybody to the same dinner table, and we want everybody to sit and enjoy a great meal.
Well, there better be some vegetarian choices.
Absolutely. And it's been a lot of fun to be able to work throughout the state and to really meet the shakers and movers and people that are doing just amazing things, whether it's out in their fields or whether it's in in their kitchens, and some of the food that they're putting together.
So really that logo needs a lot more visibility.
Right, and that is why we have a hashtag. So Rooted...
we can tweet it too.
You can tweet it, you can tag it on Instagram. And for everybody who's on Instagram, it's been a great way to check in on what local food people are doing, because people are posting their pictures left and right using
food
the hashtag.
Porn.
Yeah, basically, and it's all Vermont food porn. But it's from pictures of our happy cows on the hills in the fields to somebody making killer kimchi. And really it ranges from those who own businesses to just your everyday home cooks or people who are tinkering in their kitchen.
So certainly things like a hashtag and Instagram are hooking a younger generation. What's going to hook the older generations?
So not surprisingly, the older generation is just as computer literate as our younger generation. And we're also on Facebook, which is where primarily a lot of our content gets created, and where we share all the amazing stories of people who are doing local food things. But I've also had the pleasure of going out throughout the state this summer to fairs and festivals, where I've been able to just chat with people about what Rooted in Vermont is and talk to them about how they do local food in their own ways. And what we're doing is we're really building up a base of Vermonters who want to participate in this movement, and that we are beginning to communicate with them via email and via these interactions about ways that they can get involved.
So we can expect you at the Garlic Festival up here in September.
That actually, I'm looking to fill my September up.
Perfect.
And I was just at the Newport Centennial as well.
I think it's the second Saturday, but I'll check the date for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And those are the type of events that you get the most bang for your buck in showing up for. We don't need to go to the large beer festival in Burlington. We want to be going, like what I'm going to, and where you get to meet actual Vermonters that are coming out, are like the Newport Centennial and like Pocock Music Festival in Bristol, which I was at. And it's been great to be able to...
Wednesdays on the waterfront.
Wednesdays on the waterfront, exactly. And it's been great to be able to speak with and talk about food with Vermonters on their own turf and in their own way, because people get so excited
about food
and about what they're doing. You know, Vermonters have been growing gardens in their backyards for generations. It's not, it's normal. And what we really are trying to do is take that normal and show that that's awesome. That's great what you're doing, and we want you to come in, and we think that you should also be, you could, if you're able to, buy some local food at the grocery store because you're already part of this local food movement.
So encouraging people to grow their own fruit and veg as much as they can, have a few chickens, whatever it is.
And it's whatever works best for you and for your family. Because the reality is one blanket way of doing something is not going to work for everybody. Right. And we want everybody to find their own groove and to really find how rooted in Vermont food fits into their life.
I mean, probably the one thing that absolutely every Vermonter uses is maple syrup.
Oh, absolutely.
None of us use that fake junk.
Absolutely. I think it's sacrilege to even say.
Yeah. So maybe putting the Rooted in Vermont logo on maple syrup containers.
Well, and the Vermont Maple Syrup Open Sugar House, Open Maple House weekends.
Yes.
Those have been great. I've been able to help make a connection with the Vermont Sugar Makers Association, and they're doing amazing things helping all these sugar makers, big and small.
Right.
And I know that this association, they're bootstrapping it and just really on the ground helping all these sugar makers. And like I said,
and they have all of the additional products too.
Right, absolutely. All the value added as well.
Exactly. There's an amazing habanero maple ketchup.
Oh, I haven't had that yet. I just heard of a spruce tip maple syrup that I really want to try from one of the makers, I think, down in central Vermont.
Yeah, the habanero ketchup is up here. Aha!
That's amazing. And it's from what I've seen too, is there's local and rooted in Vermont food happening in ways that you would not really expect. There's, I think, 2 or 3 coffee roasters in northern NEK alone. And
it's good coffee.
It's great, and it's the freshest that you're gonna get for your coffee. But you also have people doing hand pies at the farmers market. Dawn Phillips.
When she's not doubling as the carnival
Right,
person.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
her hand pies are phenomenal.
We have to when we go to the farmer's market up here, we have to all right, we can only have one and then walk away because you just want to keep eating them.
Yeah, I know.
But that's exactly, those people, and that's exactly the type of stuff that we really are working to celebrate in, because the fact is, all food, no matter how you do it, is yours and it's for your family. And we want you to do it whatever fits well into your lifestyle. And if that includes incorporating some backyard garden veggies with some bananas and mangoes as well from the grocery store.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If we were only going to eat all local food all the time, the winter would just be full of beets and turnips, and it would
really be boring.
Very boring, right.
And if I don't have my coffee and tea, I will not be a happy camper.
Right, exactly. And it's been amazing to see how Vermonters throughout the state are doing local in their own way. And to really be able to frame that conversation around what rooted in Vermont food is, speaking with anglers and hunters, that's just part of their everyday lives. That's what they plan around, and that's what they fill their freezers up. And when having that conversation, you're part of the local food movement, they're like, well, duh.
Gee, you've just discovered us?
Right.
Whiz kid.
And that's who we really want to talk to and really bring in all the other great stuff to their attention as well. I mean, there's so many great programs throughout the state that are helping Vermonters who may be experiencing hard times access fresh fruits and vegetables. And a lot of that stuff is coming from local farms where volunteers are going out and gleaning, which is just picking up the excess food, and they're putting it in the food bank. And we really see that as just not only a boon to the farmers who are able to get some crops out of their fields that they may not have time for or that have been overgrown, but it's also providing all Vermonters access to the fresh fruits and vegetables that we all deserve to have access to.
Absolutely.
And we are really trying to break down those barriers again. So when you are getting your local food from wherever it is, there's no reason that you can't see that as local, that you shouldn't see that as local.
You mentioned foraging earlier.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing any workshops on foraging?
We aren't personally, but there are an amazing wealth of resources out there.
They haven't landed up here yet, and foraging is something that tends to make some people really nervous because they're convinced they can't eat something that they might see growing on a roadside. But of course you can.
Right.
And many of us do.
Well, and that's where that community of foragers and wildcrafters really comes in, because everybody in that community that I've had the pleasure of working with is just so happy to share their craft. And it's a good point that a lot of the workshops haven't come all the way up north, but there are great Facebook groups out there, such as like Vermont Foragers. And the one thing I would definitely say is, if you are going out to forage or wildcraft and you're not certain, always err on the side of caution. Right.
Particularly with fungus.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look, even I mentioned the spruce tips. I know Kingdom Brewing makes 2 different spruce tips beers every year, and that's a form of foraging that I don't think a lot of people necessarily
There's
associate.
somebody locally who does kombucha and has used spruce strips.
Yeah, I just made some spruce tip kombucha myself at home, and it's amazing what you can find in the forest.
Right.
Whether it's wild apples to make some funky ciders or
crabapple jelly, which is excellent.
Crabapple jelly, right. And I mean, of course, in the spring, 2 of the easiest ones are fiddleheads and leeks, which
ramps,
you can ramps.
Yes.
Which you can easily, for the amateur and the beginner, you can
Very
easily
easy
identify.
to do. And delicious.
Absolutely delicious.
And that's where you can do the education piece, which is don't take it all if you want it to come back next year.
Right.
How to harvest sustainably.
Always harvest sustainably. And for anybody who is interested in learning more about that, I would say just ask your friends and neighbors. I think people would be very surprised at what people are eating from their backyards.
Yes.
I mean, things like lamb's quarters are actually like delicious weeds that you can eat. Dandelion greens.
Dandelion. Every part of the dandelion.
Right, absolutely. And that's, again, why we really want to celebrate how everybody is doing.
Right. And it's cheap salad. Really cheap salad.
Exactly. And that's what, the reality is that local food does have, rooted in Vermont food, does have this perception of being more expensive. And it's true, at times it can be.
Right.
But I would also say that when you go in August to pick up your tomatoes, if you're picking them up from the farmer's market, they're going to be cheaper than the tomatoes that you're picking up in the grocery store. And
way better quality.
They taste so much better, right?
Exactly.
So much better. And that's where there's a lot out there, and a lot of what we're doing is really celebrating that seasonality of food, because that's going to help. That helps break down that perception of local food being too expensive.
Yeah.
Because when you are buying in season and you're buying rooted in Vermont food in season, it's cheaper, it tastes better, and you have the added bonus of supporting your neighbors and supporting your community and keeping the money here in Vermont where it should stay.
And there are so many local people who are canning food or making jams and jellies just in their little kitchens. And some people know, some people don't know, but so many people want to share their skills, which is really great.
And that's been one of the greatest things about talking with people is seeing how excited they get when they do talk about whether they're canning, fiddleheads, or whether they're just pickling them, right? And I think a lot of Vermonters would be pleasantly surprised at how much knowledge is out there on your street, a couple blocks away, and how many people would be willing to invite you into their house to show you how they've been doing it for years. And I guess I would encourage everybody to seek that out if that's something that they're interested in. But also, at the same time, if that's not something you're interested in doing and you want to buy that pickled fiddlehead,
go for it.
Absolutely go for it. Or if you just want to, if you're just looking at your food budget and you're like, well, I'll buy the Cabot block of cheese this week because that's what I have money for.
Right.
You're still part of this Rooted in Vermont movement.
Right.
And we want to make sure that everybody feels included because that's the only way that we're going to continue to grow this local food economy is by bringing everybody on board.
Yeah. And the one thing we all have in common, we eat.
Right.
We do some other things too, but eating's really up there as one of our favorite activities.
Absolutely. And
mine anyway.
Well, and I mean, I'm sure you can attest there's nothing better than making a meal and sitting down with your friends and family and just enjoying an hour, 2 hours, or even if it's only 30 minutes, just enjoying that conversation and that time together over something that is arguably delicious.
Yes.
And there's, for the cooks at home that are maybe listening to this or like see that idea and they're like, I don't have time to do this. There are so many recipes out there, even from like our own Vermonters, of easy ways to cook up a meal or easy ways to supplement something else that you're buying that can really not only help you develop those skills, but it makes it easy when everybody's running around crazy busy because everyone's just trying to make ends meet.
You have recipes on one of your sites, don't you?
We share recipes from a whole wealth of sites. So like the VermontHarvestOfTheMonth.org is a great resource for easy recipes. They feature a local Vermont product, produce or dairy or something along every month. And they have all these great recipes.
And you link to them on your Facebook page?
And we link to them on the Facebook page. And then we also link to other websites. A lot of the co-ops throughout the state do great things with easy recipes.
Yeah. The farmers market also publishes some recipes, and all of the vendors will give recipes if they're asked.
Absolutely. And that's what the key is. You can always ask. I think everybody would be super willing to always share and to give that knowledge wherever they can and however they can.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had such an extensive experience working with the farmers market. They're great people that are really just there doing it for the love and obviously to make a little money.
A living.
But there's,
which is important.
100%, but there's a lot of love behind it as well.
Absolutely.
And
it's a wonderful community.
Yes.
And the food is great.
Can't beat the food. It's still one of my favorite parts. So glad I got into the local food scene.
Yeah, you got a job where you're paid to eat.
Paid to eat, paid to talk to people about all the great stuff that they're doing throughout the state when it comes to local food economy.
So what are you actually doing up here in the Newport, Northeast Kingdom area that people can sort of plug into you? Yeah,
so up here in northern Northeast Kingdom, we are, so I was just at the Newport Centennial, and we have been going out on the road and talking with people. And the best way for anybody to get involved throughout the state is really to sign up for our community ambassador email newsletter. And through that, we are able to share easy actions, we call them. So it's small things like visit your farmer's market and take a photo. And we just this past month partnered with the Northeast Organic Farmers Association, NEK VT, and we did a contest for people who could post a video at their farmer's market.
Right.
And they could win $25, and somebody throughout the state won $25.
Great.
And really what we are here doing is, what I do is really network with the organizations that are down here. So I'm luckily and obviously have a pretty good relationship with Green Mountain Farm to School.
What a coincidence.
Right, which they're doing amazing work in the school gardens, with the lunchbox, with the Vermont Harvest of the Month and Farm Direct.
The lunchbox is wonderful as a program.
I wasn't ever allowed to say it when I worked there, but it was my favorite program by far. Summer meals are so important for so many kids. I mean, there's tons of children that rely on that school lunch during the year to get some nutritious meal. and still only about 30% of those kids in the state of Vermont, a little bit more than 30%, receive summer meals. So it's always super great. And the lunchbox also does focus on utilizing local producers when and where they can. And it's, once again, it always seems to be a win-win when it comes to rooted in Vermont food. But there's more, like, we're encouraging all Vermonters to get involved if they so feel with the Rooted in Vermont movement. And hopefully we're going to be working with the state libraries coming up in October. And I'll be doing some networking and hopefully reaching out to Goodrich.
Food in the libraries? Is that what you're saying?
We're doing, so we're putting together a week or so of different activities that the libraries can do if they so choose around food in your backyard, as we're calling it. So
have you talked to our library yet here?
Not yet. I've just started working with the State Library Association, and then we'll be putting out that information. But I hope to have it up here in Newport.
That would be great.
Yeah, and it's going to involve things like foraging and hunting and your backyard garden. And it's for kids to really explore and for adults to...
Unfortunately, we're out of time. It goes really
so
fast.
Quickly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
No, thank you so much. And for anybody, if I can say, definitely check us out on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Rooted
The
in
links
Vermont.
will be posted,
Pop
so
up.
you'll get the... People will get that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Pam, for having me. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.